Hello there, welcome back to Max Answers Writing Advice Questions, NaNoWriMo National Novel Writing Month Edition. You've been sending in your questions, and I'm ready to answer some more. But before I go anywhere, let me remind you, of course, that if you have questions of your own, drop them down in the comments below. I'm gonna answer all of them. Whether I may or may not do an answer-a-thon, I'm gonna answer all of them, probably going into November. We'll have to wait and see. For the time being, of course, also remember that the following is merely just my advice, my opinion, and what works for me. Don't take it as gospel, instead take it as the ramblings of a silly person who looks a little bit like this. Anyhow, let's actually dive right in. 3 questions. As always, I have a soft time limit to make sure that I don't ramble, because heaven knows I can. So, let's get the first question ready. The number is finally fixed, ready to go. Let's hope for a high number. And 21! 21 is the first question stepping up to the plate today. Oh my god, oh wow. I was thinking about this question like 2 days ago. It's gonna be a long read, but just tag along, okay? What I want to know is how long it took you to feel like your writing was at least pretty good as you write it. I have the problem of writing and hating my writing, then wanting to give up altogether. I know I have to push through it, but how long would you say it takes to get to a point where at least it is at least okay writing? Now I would start answering this question if my hair freaking behaved. So, timer on, coffee. Drunk. Funny, because there's also the 21st question. Anyhow, 21, by the way, is the legal age of drinking in the United States of America. Anyhow, let me restart the timer, because that shouldn't be part of your question. I completely understand where you're coming from. I understand this feeling, right, of writing, and you're in the act of writing, and you start looking at the writing as you're doing it. And you think to yourself, this is bad, this is terrible, this doesn't even flow good, this is nothing compared to the stories that I've read, to the other people that I know. Oh my god, if they were to see this, they would think that I'm terrible. I should just quit right now. That was the trail of thought that I would go through a long time ago. It's been a long while, and I think that finishing my first book, like finishing the first, I don't want to say a real book, because what's real and what's not, but finishing the first long-length book helped me realize the empowerment that is the first draft. I talked about it in one of the previous episodes, but I'm going to tackle it again. How long did it take me to finally, because here's the deal, though, and I'm stumbling in my words, you think that it's about the writing becoming good, or you becoming confident. And I think that confidence can mean many things. And in this particular scenario, writing, or being confident with your writing means to understand that what it looks like right now doesn't actually matter. You're writing the first draft. You're literally grabbing dirt and water and turning it into clay. And you're preparing that clay so that later you can turn it into something meaningful, something much more interesting. The first draft, to me, used to be the most terrifying, daunting, horrible part of writing, and I despised it. I despised the fact that my writing never looked as good as I wanted it to. I hated it because I was putting all this time and effort and that was back when I was, working 12 hours a day at an office that I despised, and I would get home and write, and I didn't feel like things were going forward. You know what I'm saying? And through all of those things, finishing that first book, because I finished that book and I touched it on my origin story a few videos back, or part of my origin story, but what came through me is that I wanted to start finishing stories, and to finish stories, you have to push through the first draft. I know the first draft can seem really enormous and terrifying and awful, but you need to understand this. No one is going to see that first draft, because you're not going to show it to anybody. And thus, that first draft can be whatever you want it to be. Seriously, though. And I know that I keep saying this, and I hope that it's getting through a couple of you. The first draft is merely the beginning. And what you're creating right now is not the end product. Parts of it are going to be, of course, because you're putting the foundations of your story and your characters, but you're going to revise this. You're going to look it over, and you're going to make sure that everything clicks. And by the way, I'm going to give you a little secret. When you're in the middle of doing something, it's terrifying. When you're in the middle of doing something, it looks terrible and awful. And in my personal experience, because I write books all the time, and I write for a living. It's what I do now. But in the process of writing, there are times when I'm pushing through the writing, even if I don't feel like it, even if I'm not confident on the writing, but I push through it. Why? Because I'm going to make it better later. Because I'm going to get through it, and then eventually I'll make it something that I can be proud of, because I have all of the control. I am the writer. I am the progenitor of this object that exists not only within the realm of the physical, but the realm of the imagination. I created it, and I get to decide when I share it with the world, ironically. Most of the time when I finish a project, I finish the entire thing. I always finish things. I let it sit for a while, and then I come back to pick it up. Something magical happens every time. And I can't promise that this will happen with you, but if you push through things, I think you'll start noticing this. You come back to a project. You come back to a book that you wrote a little while back, and you start reading through it, and you find lines that you like. You find lines that make you go, that's good. Max from the past, my version of myself from a few months back, really nailed this line. And usually, almost without fail, those moments come when you thought you were writing crap. When you thought you were writing absolute garbage. Why? Well, we're in the middle of writing. You're this close to the act of writing. It's of course entirely understandable that you're gonna miss those gems, and you're not gonna be able to fully appreciate them. Confidence can mean a lot of things to many people, and to me, confidence in writing in the first draft means to acknowledge that the first draft is not ultimate. The first draft is not what your story is always going to be. I can assure you that if any of your favorite writers had the guts to release their first draft, which would be equal to being a goddamn fool, but if they did, you will realize, wow, this is not perfect, because it can't be perfect. It's just the start of the story. I want you to acknowledge that. Internalize that and just keep pushing through the writing. Seriously. I know that it's a really big thing now to share your writing the instant you're done with it, and I get that, and I get that's the way people work, and that's fine. That's not the way I do things, and I don't want you to do things like I do, but I want you to, if anything, consider the great benefits that come from having control over when you release your stuff. Giving yourself time, not being rushed, releasing things when they're ready so that they can be the best things possible, and you can be proud of them, and you can be confident in them, okay? Okay? Writing can be terrifying, and it can be really scary, but the only way to move forward is to keep writing. And in the case of the first draft, you have to push through it, and acknowledge, remember, internalize that the first draft is not ultimate. The first draft is just merely the beginning. I hope that helps. And one question and I've already rambled long enough. Let's move forward. I've got the questions ready to go. Let's click the button. The next question is gonna be number 32. Again? No, it was 21. Okay. The questions, by the way, are shifting because I'm shortening the table. So let's see, what is question number 32? This is an interesting question. What was the craziest thing in writing that did not work as you initially intended, but it still worked anyways? Now, this question is fun, and I like it. I'm gonna twist it a little bit to make it a little bit more insightful for everyone else, okay? So, what is the craziest thing? I don't know if I can nail down the craziest thing, but I can pinpoint one that I bring out all the time. I wrote a book called Justine's Blood a little while back. And and this also connected to the first question, by the way, the first question. As though I'm doing a newscast. Anyhow, I wrote a story called Justine's Blood, and there's a particular twist near, I guess at the start of the third act of that story. I forget how that story is structured, but there's a twist near the end of that story. And in the act of writing, I was downright certain that any person with half a brain would figure out that plot twist coming from a mile away. And I was really worried that it wouldn't work. I was worried that it would just ruin the story. But I kept writing through it. I kept writing through that worry. And when the time came to revision, I looked at the story and I realized that the plot twist was not as obvious as I thought it was. And it was way more effective than I thought it was. And it just worked. It actually worked. And then I showed it to my beta readers, and they liked it. And it was one of those interesting moments where being in the middle of writing, being in the middle of the act of writing, this close, makes you feel like nothing works, makes you feel like everything is garbage and crap, and that maybe you shouldn't write. And I want to stand here as the person to remind you that these are merely your fears and doubts, and you don't have to listen to them. every time, at least not within this particular stance. Writing is really weird and interesting to me. And yeah, by the way, I wanted to internalize the fact that, this person who's been writing books for a while, and a lot of them, I thought that the ending of that book was just not gonna work. But were those fears justified? I don't think so. I think they were just me being worried about the story. And that's okay. That's the way writing is. I want this to stand as a little bit of a leeway into future questions, because I've gotten a lot of questions, and a lot of them can be summarized by the following statement. I'm still going to answer them to remind you, but I wanted to remember that when you're in the middle of writing, don't judge your story, don't question it, keep going. Why? Because remember, you're only writing the first draft, the beginning, the first instance of your story. You can always change it and always make it better, and you can fix it. You can make it work. You can do everything you need to do to make this story work for you, and to make it be as effective as you want it to be. But the only way you're gonna get there is if you finish the story. So consider this a friendly reminder to everyone out there who may be in the middle of writing later on, and you may be thinking to yourself, this story is garbage. It's been done before. Which is a really silly thing to say. It's been done before, it's not important, it's not a meaningful story, it's not effective. Shut up. Keep writing, keep pushing forward, and when the time comes to look at the story, look at it objectively, and see, because maybe, just maybe, those crazy things you thought were dumb may just become the very crux of your story. The most awesome moment that people will remember later on. I hope that helps. Oh man. Did you like how I brought the question back? I felt so clever about that. Okay, silliness out of the way. Let me actually just cut this question, remove it from the overall list. And now, let's actually adjust the number of questions at the very bottom of this table. And the next question is gonna be number 12. Question number 12, step up to the plate. Final question for today's video. Oh! Yes! Finally a question about format! I love format. Perfect. Do you have any advice for writing internal dialogue, or structurally how to transition from a description to a thought? Thank you. Thank you so much, whoever sent this question. I love format questions. Okay, from the top. I'll actually in reverse. I'll give my advice in a moment. First and foremost, a structural format. Inner dialogue questions and answers. How do you show inner dialogue within writing? That is done through italics. Inner dialogue should always be italicized. The letter shift is slightly to one side. That shows that the following dialogue is inside of a person's mind or is spoken through memory. There are two different types of internal dialogue. Internal dialogue that is direct internal dialogue, that is someone thinking inside of their head. And that internal dialogue does not require quotation marks. Now, when you have characters who are speaking inside of a dream or inside of a memory, or, internal dialogue such as a character remembering when someone told them that they were terrible people, that is italicized and in quotation marks. Now, why have the text italicized? Why not just have it be regular text? Well, because it helps to show the reader that what's going on right now, what you're hearing, what you're seeing, is not part of the external world, but the internal world. That's what the italics are for. That, and also they are used for adding emphasis to words and description and other dialogue, but that's just aside from that. Now, as for structural and advice things, the first and foremost rule that I give to people, and this is not only about internal and direct inner dialogue, but also dialogue in general, okay? Max's dialogue rule number 1. Whenever a new person is talking, or someone who wasn't talking before is now talking, whether internally or externally, make it a new paragraph. If you have a huge block of description, and then you have your character reacting to that or giving their own thoughts, make it a new paragraph. It's really as simple as that. Whenever somebody who wasn't talking before is now talking, make it a new paragraph. Even if it's just one single sentence, it's fine. It is entirely fine to have that line of dialogue on their own. Because otherwise, it just feels awkward to have it at the end of a description paragraph. And I totally understand why you're having questions about this, and you feel that it's weird to transition between description and a thought. And that is why I'm here to tell you, make it a new line. If it's internal or direct dialogue, it doesn't matter. Well, why do we spend so much time worrying about all these rules in writing? Well, because these things have come to place after decades and centuries of coming up with the way to make the story much more easily digestible for the reader. We do this because we don't want the reader to be confused. We want things to be clear so that they can enjoy the story without having to be battling the format. And that is why we do all of these things. And that's why I recommend you, please, whenever somebody new is talking, make it a new paragraph. Please! That is the smallest thing that can make a giant difference. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. My timer went off screen and it's getting really hot in my room, so I think I'm gonna call it a video right now. I wanna thank you for watching. Thank you for spending a little bit of your day with me. And remember, of course, as always, that if you have questions of your own, you can leave them down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you on the next one.